Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you're part of our journey. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and get ready for a story that will leave you thinking. And if you love inspiring tales, a like goes a long way. People like you don't belong here. These words echoed across the marble foyer, making the old man's fingers tremble on his worn suitcase handle. Wealthy guests turned to watch, some already pulling out phones to capture the humiliation of a man who had spent his life serving his country. The manager's gold watch glinted under the crystal chandelier as he pointed dismissively toward the door. The elderly veteran's face remained stoic, only his eyes betraying the pain of a man accustomed to invisibility. Security was already approaching when the atmosphere in the lobby shifted imperceptibly. In the distance, someone set aside a magazine and rose from a leather sofa. A tall man in a simple hoodie moved slowly toward the reception desk, and whispers of recognition rippled through the foyer. This was the moment Leonardo DiCaprio decided to teach a lesson everyone would remember. If this moment made you feel something, imagine what's coming next. Hit that like button and stay with us. Subscribe now. War veteran Robert Miller had saved for this day almost his entire life. At 83, he had finally decided to fulfill a promise made to his late wife, to spend a night at the Grand Royal, where they had once dreamed of celebrating their anniversary. His worn coat maintained the dignity of a man who had never asked for help, while his pocket held all the savings set aside from his military pension. Richard Donovan, manager of the hotel for 12 years, prided himself on determining a guest's status at first glance. His instinct rarely failed him, and right now it screamed that the man before him didn't belong in the world of five-star service. The thought that guests paying thousands per night might see this old man in the lobby seemed to him a professional failure of the highest order. "I'm afraid we have no vacancies." The lie slipped from Donovan's lips with practiced ease. He pushed away the elderly hand extending a worn envelope of cash. "We only accommodate guests with prior reservations." His voice grew louder with each word, transforming the exchange into a public spectacle. Patrons at the bar and lobby froze like theater audiences. Two businessmen smirked. A diamond-adorned woman turned away with a visible grimace. A young couple quietly filmed the scene. Another video for social media where someone else's humiliation would convert to likes. No one moved to intervene, as if a glass wall separated them from what was happening. In a far corner of the lobby, Leonardo DiCaprio waited while his suite was being prepared after renovations. The actor had noticed the old man when he entered. Something in his posture spoke of dignity that couldn't be bought with money. The actor's bodyguard leaned in. "Want me to handle this?" DiCaprio shook his head. Some things a person needed to do themselves. He watched as the manager summoned security with a nod, saw how the veteran's shoulders faltered. Not from fear, but from the realization that the system once again saw him merely as an inconvenience, an obstacle to others' comfort. Leonardo recalled his grandfather, also a veteran, and how people gradually began looking through him as the wrinkles on his face deepened. His grandfather once told him, "Being famous means never becoming invisible." Only now did the actor truly understand the meaning of those words. Security was approaching the old man when DiCaprio stood up. He didn't rush, slowly set aside his magazine, finished his water, as if giving a chance for any of the dozens of witnesses to intervene first. But all preferred the role of spectators. Now it was his scene, and he knew exactly what to do. Things are about to take a turn. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe, like our video, and keep watching. DiCaprio's footsteps echoed across the marble floor. Guests froze, recognizing the famous face. The manager didn't immediately understand what was happening. He was too absorbed in the petty power he wielded over the old man. Only when the actor was a few steps from the counter did Donovan finally look up and attempt to transform his expression of contempt into a professional smile. "Mr. DiCaprio, how may I assist you?" His voice instantly transformed, becoming obsequious. But Leonardo didn't answer him. Instead, he turned to the veteran and extended his hand. "Sir, it's a great honor to meet you." The old man hesitantly shook the offered hand, clearly not understanding what was happening. His eyes, faded with time, studied the face he might have seen in old films but never expected to encounter here. "Robert Miller," he introduced himself, and his handshake proved firm, like a man who had worked with his hands his entire life. "Leonardo," the actor responded simply, maintaining eye contact that communicated respect rather than celebrity obligation. DiCaprio turned to the manager, whose smile had frozen in an unnatural curve. The actor spoke quietly, but in the ensuing silence, every word carried throughout the hall. "I heard you're having problems with room availability. Strange, I was told the hotel is only at 70% capacity." Donovan paled, his fingers nervously drumming on the counter. "There's been a misunderstanding. Of course, we have vacancies." "Excellent. Then, I'd like to pay for the presidential suite for Mr. Miller." The veteran shook his head and placed his hand on Leonardo's shoulder, stopping him. His voice was quiet but full of dignity. "Thank you, son. But I can pay for myself. I've been saving for this day for many years." He extended the envelope again, and this time Donovan accepted it with trembling hands. Phone cameras were now aimed not at the old man's humiliation, but at the unexpected confrontation between a celebrity and the hotel administration. "What branch did you serve in, sir?" DiCaprio asked, deliberately keeping the conversation going as the manager processed the payment. DiCaprio placed his card next to the veteran's money. "In that case, allow me to pay for dinner. It would be an honor to dine with you tonight and hear your story." Donovan wavered between fear and obsequiousness. He attempted to defuse the situation with an inappropriate joke. "Perhaps we should check his identification. There are so many scammers these days." The chuckle that escaped him died under the actor's icy stare. "You're right," Leonardo replied calmly. "It's easy to fake identity. Much harder to fake character, dignity, and honor. Do you have any photo ID, Mr. Miller?" The veteran produced an old military identification card. DiCaprio took it and, instead of handing it to the manager, showed it to everyone present in the lobby. "Medal of Honor. Purple Heart. I wonder how many people in this hotel can boast of risking their lives not for money or fame, but for other people." The silence became deafening. Hotel guests who had been laughing at the old man moments before now lowered their eyes. Some quietly put away their phones, others discreetly wiped away tears. The revelation of who stood before them, not just an elderly man in a worn coat, but a decorated hero, hit them like a physical force. This story is only getting deeper. What would you do in this situation? Comment below, and let's talk. The manager attempted to salvage the situation, frantically entering data into the computer. "We'll prepare the best room for Mr. Miller. This is a misunderstanding." "No," Leonardo's voice cut through the air. "This isn't a misunderstanding. It's a choice. You chose to judge a man by his clothes, not by his merits. You chose to humiliate him publicly to display your petty power." He turned to the hotel visitors, many of whom were recording the scene. His words were no longer addressed to the manager, but to everyone in the hall. "We all made choices. I did too. I sat there watching as this man who defended our country was humiliated, and I didn't immediately step in." Robert Miller stood straight like someone accustomed to formation. In his eyes there was neither self-pity nor triumph, just a strange mixture of weariness and gratitude. He placed his hand on the actor's shoulder. "Son, it's not worth it. I'm used to it. At my age, you become invisible." "That's exactly the problem." DiCaprio swept the room with his gaze. "We've made invisible those who deserve to be seen the most. In a world obsessed with selfies and status, we've forgotten how to recognize true value." People in the lobby exchanged glances, many lowering their phones. The actor's words reflected off marble walls, hitting their mark. Two elderly ladies sitting by the fireplace rose and approached the veteran. "My husband served too," said one, shaking Miller's hand. Others followed. A middle-aged businessman, a young couple, a family with teenage children. The lobby filled with voices of people who just a minute ago had been silent observers. Donovan stood behind the counter watching as his carefully constructed world of status and hierarchy crumbled before his eyes. He helplessly looked to his assistant, not knowing how to stop this spontaneous outbreak of humanity in the perfectly controlled space of a luxury hotel. "I never expected," Robert whispered, overwhelmed by the sudden attention and respect. For the first time in years, he was being seen not as an inconvenience, but as someone whose life and service mattered. The phone at the reception desk rang. Donovan answered, and the color drained from his face. With a trembling hand, he extended the receiver to DiCaprio. "It's the CEO of the hotel chain. He wants to speak with you." Leonardo shook his head. "Tell him I'm not interested in talking. But if he wants to make things right, he should speak with Mr. Miller." He turned to the veteran, who now found himself the center of attention for the entire hotel. "Sir, I think they'll offer you a free room, but it's your decision. You can accept it as an apology, or we can find another hotel that would be honored to welcome you as a distinguished guest." Robert Miller hesitated momentarily. Then his face lit up with a smile that transformed deep wrinkles into rays of light. "You know, son, my Eleanor always said, forgiveness heals both sides. I'll stay, but on one condition." He turned to the manager, whose hand still clutched the phone. "I want this young man to apologize to those standing at the end of this queue, to those whose clothes or appearance might have made him make the same choice." The manager looked up, seeing for the first time a line of guests whose faces showed they had been watching and listening. A middle-aged couple in simple clothes, a young man with tattoos, a family with an elderly grandmother in a wheelchair, all watching expectantly. "It's not over yet. The best part is coming. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it." An hour later, Robert Miller sat in the presidential suite, bashfully surveying the luxurious space. On the table stood photographs of his late wife, which he always carried with him. DiCaprio sat across from him, attentively listening to stories about the war, about the life of an entire generation that now often remained invisible. Outside the window, city lights twinkled, but inside the hotel, something more significant was occurring. Social media was already exploding with videos of the incident. The hashtag #DiCaprio lesson was rapidly gaining popularity. But unlike typical viral scandals, the comments were filled with people's stories about how they became invisible to society due to age, appearance, or social status. In the hotel lobby, manager Donovan, pale and subdued, personally greeted each guest, including an elderly couple in modest clothing who hesitantly entered through the doors, clearly feeling out of place among the marble and crystal. The next morning, Robert and Leonardo had breakfast together in the hotel restaurant. The actor listened as the veteran spoke about his wife, how they had dreamed of spending their anniversary here, and how he had abandoned this dream out of fear he wouldn't be accepted in such a place. "You know what's funny, son? I feared this more than enemy bullets." DiCaprio motioned to the waiter and requested champagne. When the glasses were filled, he raised a toast. "To Eleanor, and to courage, not just the kind needed on the battlefield, but the kind needed every day to maintain dignity in a world that tries to take it away." From neighboring tables, people rose to join the toast. Many approached Robert to shake his hand, thank him for his service, share stories about their own veteran relatives. The waitstaff informed them that several guests had already paid for his meals in advance. "I never expected all this," Miller admitted, surveying the restaurant where everyone now seemed to recognize him. Eleanor would have loved being here, seeing all this respect. Before departing, Leonardo DiCaprio received a message from his charitable foundation. Anonymous donations to the Veteran Assistance Program had increased by 300% overnight. Videos with the hashtag #DiCaprio lesson had been viewed by millions, and stories of small acts of kindness toward elderly people were appearing everywhere. "Didn't expect such an effect," the actor confessed as he and Robert said goodbye at the hotel entrance. The veteran smiled. "People aren't bad, son. Sometimes they just need a reminder that behind clothes, wrinkles, and status stand real souls." Manager Donovan personally brought out Miller's luggage and shook his hand. "We've changed the hotel policy, sir. Now we'll always have a special room for veterans, regardless of their appearance." Robert nodded and got into the taxi. He was going home with a photograph where he and Leonardo raised glasses to Eleanor. And for the first time in many years, he felt visible again. Not because a celebrity happened to be nearby, but because the world had momentarily opened its eyes. Wow, what a story! If this moved you, imagine what else we have for you. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and let us know what you think.